Hello and welcome to season 2 of the Think Broad podcast. We are really excited to be here at the Met in the beautiful Grand Salle, and we're really excited to introduce today's guest. But before I do, please make sure you subscribe and comment. You know, we love a community of engaged and informed stakeholders, so join us. And with that, welcome, Councilwoman. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Can you talk a little bit about, just share who you are, the district that you cover, and some of your priorities that you work on?
Sure thing. I'm Councilmember Jamie Gauthier. I have the pleasure of representing much of West and Southwest Philadelphia, the 3rd District in Philadelphia City Council. I am rounding out the second year of my second term. I started in council in January of 2020. I'm an urban planner by trade. Prior to council, I'd worked for and led nonprofits focused on housing and various aspects of community and economic development. And so I bring that expertise to City Council. I focus mostly on affordable housing. I think that everybody deserves quality, affordable housing in a neighborhood of opportunity. So most of my policy making is focused on that and focused on anti-displacement. I chair City Council's Housing Committee, and I also chair our Committee on the Environment.
And we initially met when you were with the Sustainability Business?
The Sustainable Business Network, yes.
Sustainable Business Network, yes. And how long were you there before you transitioned to City Council? What made you say, this is the time for me to be in politics?
Sure. So I led the Sustainable Business Network from about 2012 to 2016.
Yeah, you did an amazing job too.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I left there to lead the Fairmount Park Conservancy, raising money for investment in our parks and recreation system here in the city of Philadelphia. And prior to those roles, I'd worked for LISC for a long time, focused on building more affordable housing in the city. So I kind of felt like for the 15 years before I ran for council, I spent my time helping Philadelphians to shape their neighborhoods and the city. And I felt like I could do that in a more powerful and impactful way as a city council member.
Yeah. And I remember that election. I remember being very proud of you for taking that leap and joining city council. And so how has it been so far?
It's been amazing. First, thank you. That means a lot coming from you. I've always admired you.
Oh, thank you.
This is my dream job. I knew that I wanted to run for council for about a decade before I actually did it. And it's a huge opportunity to make positive change if you think about it. I'm one of 17 people in the entire city of almost 1.6 million people that gets an opportunity to make policy, impact systems, and ideally and hopefully to make people's lives better. It's a huge and wonderful opportunity, even though it's very hard.
Of course it is, but you're killing it. And
thank you.
It's why I invited you here, because you're not a district person for North Broad. This is not your district, but I do recognize that you're doing some amazing work and initiating some amazing policies, especially in the space of vacancies and vacant lands. And we've had our own struggles in that space. Most recently, we tried to activate a parking lot at 525 North Broad at Broad and Spring Garden, and change it into this very underutilized space. It's like a loose parking space. It's not, but it is. And so we wanted to change it into a community oasis, so to speak, where the community can gather. We got some amazing plans. We even got some funding. Like
That's awesome.
We asked for nothing, but the only thing that we asked for was access.
Yeah.
That's it. We didn't ask for the developer to give us any money, nothing. No help on building out the space or anything. We just needed access, and we couldn't get that.
So he wouldn't give you access to the space.
We couldn't get access to the space. So it was a missed opportunity. And so I know that West Philly has its share of, that's your district. and I know that you have your share, but you've been able to manage this space. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure thing. Well, first, it sounds like you had a wonderful plan and vision for this space, but you ran into an owner that just wasn't willing to work with you in the community, and that's unfortunate. But that's not a failure on your part.
Oh,
so
no,
first
no.
and foremost. I think honestly what's helped the most with respect to turning vacant spaces and properties into a productive use for the community is organizations like yours, and having people on the ground that are willing to pay attention to these spaces, take care of them, search for a different use, and do that until it sticks. Really, that's the work. I worked for LISC for a long time, and we did a lot of investment in CDCs, managing commercial corridors. And I will tell you, hands down, when there's a group like Think Broad or the many CDCs across the city that are willing to pour into a commercial corridor, to recognize when vacancies are happening, to make relationships with owners and developers, and to actually market their communities based on what their communities want. That's the difference. And by and large, commercial corridors that have that type of presence are stronger than those that don't, right? And so in West Philadelphia, I've seen that, or Southwest Philadelphia as well, I've seen that play out. One example I'll give you is the Africatown project. That's being led by an organization called Akana. And it really is just highlighting the cultural diversity that has existed in that area of Southwest for a long time. Many African-owned and Caribbean-owned immigrant businesses, a high immigrant population. So just shining a light on all the assets that exist there. And so Akana created a vision for this area with the community, and they've been actively selling this vision, right? And that's how they've been able to turn the vacant spaces around, because they have a vision that they're working from that's informed by the community, and everything from there sort of falls into place. So there was an awful vacant property that was falling down. I thought that it was dangerous, honestly. And they've acquired that property, and they're using it for a cultural center that will be a hub for the Africatown project. So by and large, having that stewarding presence like North Broad or the many other organizations across the city makes that difference. And so you may not have done it with this space right now, but I have no doubt that you'll get there. Just keep working at it.
Thank you for the encouragement. I appreciate that. And it's very necessary, because we do have a lot of vacant spaces. But I would love if you could talk a little bit more about how the acquisition takes place, and the value in that, and how should organizations start thinking through that? Because ultimately we don't own it, we don't own that space, so we don't have rights to it, right? So a developer has absolutely every right to say no, even if it is at the expense of community revitalization. And so how do we kind of break down that barrier? What does acquisition look like, and what does maybe even breaking down that barrier that I'm talking about between the developer or property owner and the community, saying, you know what, this is just temporary. We don't want to do this. We know that you may want to develop on this at some point, and this is just something that we want to do temporary. How do we make that work? What are some best practices you've seen in that space?
So first, you're right. A developer can say, or an owner of a property,
and I saw your face when
I
said
say,
that.
they have the right to say what they have the legal right to say what they do and don't want to happen on their property, but that doesn't mean that you're a good neighbor. And I think that developers should be a part of a community. They should want good relationships with the community. And I also think that people who live in a community, whether they own property or not, have the right to shape the vision for that community, right? And so I think acquisition can work in a number of different ways. In your example, it seems like it's going to take a lot of relationship building or maybe deal making. I'm not sure if this is a developer that's, of the city. On some corridors like 52nd Street, we're dealing with developers that they're not even there,
yeah,
right?
That's a big challenge. The same thing for North Broad. We have a lot of developers that are just not even in the country, nevertheless, like the neighborhood. So,
right. So that type of owner is hard because there is speculative, development. They're holding it until the right price comes along. They don't have a tie to the community, and frankly, they don't care, what happens in their space. But there are other, examples where you might be able to build that relationship. I'll give you an example of Intercultural Center in West Philadelphia. They serve the immigrant population there. They serve a lot of high-risk youth. They were able to make a partnership with a developer that was across the street from their former building a new development that will mostly be housing. But they struck a deal with the developer to have their nonprofit headquartered in that building. And the developer, initially had planned out a market rate residential development for that building, but they're unable to rent the units at those prices. So now Intercultural is helping them to turn those units more and to market them as affordable. So that's a lot of relationship building and deal making, right? And both sides benefited from that agreement. But it could also be working with the city. In the example that I gave you with Akana, they use several $100,000 from the city of Philadelphia to go about that acquisition. I so believe in community organizations in their role in equitable development that I fought for $3.5 million for operating grants for our CDC partners so that you will have the freedom and the space to operate like that. I know that PACDC, Philadelphia Association of CDCs, is also working and lobbying the city to get a quick strike acquisition fund because we need organizations like yours to be able to compete with speculative developers, folks who are only thinking about profit and not what the community needs. When you see a development opportunity, you need to be able to acquire. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to offer that to you.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Let's talk more about policy. In this space that you think would be helpful as organizations like the Northborough Renaissance, and recognizing that we are a business improvement district, so that means that our goal is to improve the district by way of business attraction and business retention, and to make sure that the district is shining and ready for increased foot traffic and improving the overall quality of life for the residents that live here. And so how does legislation start to play a role in those goals, especially as it relates to vacancies, and what can be done from an advocacy standpoint for organizations like the Northborough Renaissance to kind of support those efforts?
Sure thing. So first, I think the city can do more to make development easier when there is an opportunity. So sometimes a property might be vacant, or we may be missing an opportunity because it takes so long to get through the city's permitting and zoning processes. Recently, I made some tweaks for affordable housing developments that will allow developers to get through the zoning and building permitting process a lot faster.
I
think we should.
That's good. That's good, because that alone is so intimidating, especially, I mean, you have to be an expert in that space, for real. And for nonprofits, especially small nonprofits like the Northborough Renaissance, like, what do we really know about that process? So it's good that you're doing stuff in that area, but talk more about that.
Absolutely. So one, the city shouldn't be the barrier, right, in good development on corridors. I think zoning plays a role. You want to make sure that on corridors like Broad Street or other corridors in the city, that the zoning actually attracts the type of development that we would like to see, right? That the zoning is set for that, retail presence presence on the ground floor, for example, or would allow a residential component, or, you know, maybe we can lower or get rid of parking minimums in a way that would attract development and attract people to the corridor because they can develop more cheaply, right? If they don't have to worry about building and parking. So I've taken a look at some of the corridors in my district and changed the zoning and made it more focused on transit-oriented development. And then I guess I'll also throw in that we can probably make it easier for people to acquire publicly owned land and properties. Philadelphia has the distinction of having thousands of parcels of city-owned vacant land, and we also own quite a lot of property. So those are opportunities to shape a commercial corridor or to bring permanently affordable housing and to work with community beneficial organizations like North Broad in order to do that. But it could take quite a while to get through the city's land disposition process. So it's a barrier sometimes. And then I do think that acquisition fund for community-minded organizations that really help them to jump into the real estate market, which is, you know, quite hot in many areas, would be a good thing for the city.
And then I'm missing the name of the legislation that was passed that allows organizations to say this vacant spot is blighted, like is clearly blighted, and we want to take ownership of it. And there's a legislation that's created around that.
I think that's Act 135.
Act 135,
which is kind of like a double-edged sword. So when you have a good organization like yours, it could be a tool in removing blight and getting a property put back into productive use. And I've seen that happen many times. More recently, though, we've also been seeing it used in sort of predatory ways, especially in rapidly gentrifying areas. But Act 135 conservatorship was developed for the purpose that you're bringing up, right? To, you know, remove blight, to turn things that are eyesores back into something positive. And so it's absolutely a tool.
And it's I think in all legislation you have to think, sometimes you do it and it, you know, it can have backlash. It can be used in the wrong way, and you work through that. And one thing that, you know, could potentially be considered, and I want to make sure I'm not going into the lens of lobbying, and I want to stay in advocacy mode here because we are a nonprofit. And one thing is, I think the Act 135 did was it provided a lens into what a different type of acquisition can look like. And how can we build on that for plots of land that may not necessarily be so blighted, right? Like it's not horribly blighted, it's not falling down, it's not a danger, but it's definitely it's causing a problem for our efforts to revitalize this corridor because it's just sitting here and nobody's doing anything with it, and it's really an eyesore, even though it's not dangerous, or, you know. And so how can we kind of insert those types of scenarios into policy?
Sure. So one, my sort of comments on Act 135 were not a bit to get rid of it. I think it can be that tool to take ownership of a property when you have good, responsible, community-minded actors. I just think that the policy needs some tweaks, that's all. In terms of buildings that are sitting there and causing a problem to the corridor, certainly Act 135 is a tool, but also working with the city. Sometimes, you know, I would like for the city to have more capacity to go after problematic property owners. At times it feels like we're violating and citing the same people over and over again, and they're just ignoring it, right? And we only have a limited capacity to move these cases forward towards legal action. So a piece of it, I think, is building the city's capacity to really hold these problematic property owners accountable. And then also, you know, just arming our nonprofits with more tools and more capital to really be actors in the private market.
Yeah, because I think that's so important because, again, back to the Northborough Renaissance, we for that project, we had everything we needed.
Yeah.
We had community engagement, we had excitement, we had funding, we had everything we needed. All we needed was access. And that should never stop progress because now that we don't have it, it's still just sitting there as an eyesore,
Well, that's... You gave a try, right?
I love the well.
Because I've been involved in community development for a very long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could take a decade for a project to come through fruition. So your first try shouldn't be your last try.
Thank you for the encouragement.
Exactly, because even if you don't have the relationship with the developer right now, I'm sure you know someone who has that relationship.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can think of something that's valuable to you or valuable to the developer that maybe you touch in some way, right? So your first try is not going to be your last try. But
Absolutely not.
and things change all the time. Just yesterday, I was communicated to by a property owner that I had called, 2 months ago. This is a landlord, on a corridor in my district who was renting to a smoke shop. And, I called him to say,
smoke shops.
I called him directly to say, listen, we think this smoke shop is engaging in illegal drug activity. They are creating an unsafe environment for the people who live here. And, that first call was not friendly. He said, they're paying me rent and you can't prove that they're doing anything, and I don't want to have a conversation with the community. Well, don't you know he needed me for something yesterday? So all I'm saying is relationships shift and change, and sometimes these projects can take a long time. Don't give up.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for that story. It's so encouraging. And it truly is a testament to the work that you're doing in City Council. Thank you. And that's it. This is nothing minor, but I appreciate that you pay attention when we're testifying and that you're not on your phone and that you're not. I appreciate that. So I just wanted to make sure I shared that with you.
Thank you.
One thing, and I think we have time for maybe one more question, and I did want to ask, what gives you hope in these missed opportunities into something better? Is it like that conversation that you had yesterday, you're going to need me for something, and is that the hope? Is it those moments that give you the momentum to keep fighting and to keep moving forward?
What gives me hope is our community members. I feel like community members know what's best for their communities. They have a vision for what they want to see in their communities, right? I went to school to get an urban planning degree, and I was one of few Black women there, but Black women are urban planners without the degree all over the city, right?
Yeah.
That's what gives me hope, right? Yeah. Organizations like yours who are wrapping their arms around a specific community, developing a vision that's based in what community members want to see, and making sure that there's fairness and equity as development happens and as people come and go. That's what gives me hope. That's why I believe so much in community planning. I won't get too controversial, but last year, the thing that frustrated me the most about the whole arena conversation was this notion that we needed a huge corporation to tell us what was needed on Market East. Community members know what they want to see on Market East. We just have to ask them and allow them to be in the in the driver's seat and a part of the process. That's what gives me hope.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And before we close, I like to ask all our guests, what does the hashtag Think Broad means to you?
I see Think Broad as a challenge and an opportunity to be expansive, to bring all kinds of ideas to the table, and to consider, what's going on in other places, but also to show up like we know Philly can be a leader in so many ways.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. This is why we have you here. This is why we invited you from West Philly to North Broad, because you're amazing and keep up the great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate you.